This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
What's up, sports fans? CJ the Painkiller DeSimone, host of Weapons Hot Mission Briefs, and you are currently watching the best Sunday morning football show on the internet, the Big Football Show. Enjoy and have a great morning.
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboys fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, I'm from Brooklyn. Hey, guys, any...
We're here. It's Sunday, and get ready for the Big Football Show and more. I'm your host, Jack, with your co-host, James Martin, and my co-host during the week and every other time on the Mac and Jack Sports Show, Jack Hurst. Sonia Pearson is scheduled to be in. Also, we're going to have in Keith Angle, and the Philly Sports guy is scheduled to be in also. So, good morning, James. Good morning, Jack. How you doing this morning?
Hey, guys.
All right, so let's get it started with football. Of course, it's a Big Football Show and more. And I'm going to start off with a linebacker that passed away this week. He played for the Dallas Cowboys way back when in the 70s. And he wasn't a great linebacker. You wouldn't consider him like a Hall of Famer, Lawrence Taylor, Harry Carson, Dick Butkus kind of guy. But he was a guy that was always around the football. And he's the only football player to win the Super Bowl MVP on a losing team when the Dallas Cowboys defeated when the Baltimore Colts, defeated the Dallas Cowboys. And Jack can help me out here a little bit. I remember watching the game, Jack. The Colts got a touchdown on a deflected pass by Johnny Unitas, got deflected way up in the air behind the defenders. The wide receiver, I can't recall his name right now, caught it, ran for a touchdown, and a wide receiver kicked a field goal for the Colts. Jim O'Brien kicks the field goal to win the game, and I don't even think he was a starting kicker at the beginning of the season.
He was. No, Jim O'Brien was the starting kicker. I don't remember him being a wide receiver. Maybe he was on the roster like as a backup wide receiver. I don't remember that being the case. I think he was strictly a kicker. But that game, Super Bowl V, is remembered for Jim O'Brien's game-winning kick as time expired. And it was known as the Blunder Bowl. It's like neither team, the Cowboys or the Colts in Super Bowl V, wanted to win. You mentioned Johnny Unitas. Johnny Unitas didn't finish the game. He got injured during the game, and Earl Morrall actually finished the game. And it was a tiny bit of vindication for Earl Morrall because 2 Super Bowls before that, Super Bowl III, the Colts were upset by the New York Jets. And this Colt team in Super Bowl V wasn't nearly as good as the team that lost to the Jets in Super Bowl III. Not nearly. They were just a shell of themselves compared to that. Yet they were good enough to win the Super Bowl, which should give you an idea how good a team they were in Super Bowl III. But Chuck Howley of the Cowboys was outstanding. He was all over the field, and I believe, maybe Keith could correct me if I'm wrong, at the end of the game, when O'Brien made the game-winning kick, I think it was Chuck Howley who took his helmet and he flung it across the whole field. It's kind of remembered for the agony of defeat. Was it Chuck Howley?
I think it was Bob Lilly.
It was Bob Lilly? Okay. Yeah, but that picture of a player flinging his helmet across the field. Imagine that happened today. If Adam Vinatieri, when he hit his game-winning field goal, a player flings his helmet and it hits someone on the head, 30, 40 yards down the field, a spectator who got on the field. But there were so many mistakes made in that game, and both teams were ridiculed for the way they played. But ironically, the next season, the Cowboys did win the Super Bowl, and the Colts came one game away from going to the Super Bowl and actually having a rematch. But Chuck Howley was outstanding that game, absolutely outstanding. And he got the MVP, maybe because they had no one else to give it to because of the way the game turned out. But Howley, like I said, was brilliant that game. And we talk about him today in a historical sense, winning the MVP on a losing team in the Super Bowl, being a defensive player, very, very rare.
And it was John Mackey that caught that pass you were talking about.
Tight
end for the Colts, right? Yeah.
So I was going to say it wasn't one of the best Super Bowls I've ever watched. But at that time, way back when, I mean, I'm thinking it was 70, 71, right in that area, one of those 2 years. And at that time, I remember sitting on my uncle's couch watching the whole game. And I know it wasn't that exciting for sure. I know that. So it wouldn't be up there as one of the most exciting Super Bowls of all time. But it did have a last-second field goal. So I guess if you look at it that way, you could say so, but not really. So anyway, Chuck Howley passes away. I got a story here. And we all remember Jamarcus Russell as being maybe one of the biggest busts as a quarterback in the NFL. Well, it seems he was working as a volunteer high school coach, and he talked a local businessman into donating $74,000 to the high school team for weight room equipment. The only thing was the team never got it. Russell put it in a credit union, $74,000, and withdrew $55,000. So now he's being sued by the sports place that gave it to him. Let me see if I can get the exact name of the guy that did this. Well, he's facing a lawsuit, accused of taking money from the program. Chris Knowles was a local business owner that gave Russell a $74,000 donation. So he's not allowed around the team anymore. He's not allowed around the high school anymore. So here's a guy that not only bust as a quarterback, but doesn't look like he's too good of a human being either. So that's kind of crazy.
More reserve judgment, Mac. I just want to say one thing about Jamarcus Russell. His contract wound up being historical. He got paid so much money on this rookie deal, and it didn't work out that the owners decided with the players union. I'm sure the players union wasn't thrilled about it. There has to be a rookie scale for quarterbacks because all these quarterbacks this year, imagine they came out of college as free agents, the amount of money they would hold out for. So they have to play on the rookie scale basically for 4 years, in large part because Jamarcus Russell, I don't want to use the word was a bust, didn't turn out as hoped. Had Jamarcus Russell been outstanding, who knows? Maybe the rookie scale wouldn't have been in effect.
Well,
I don't think it's too cruel, Jack, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, what are we reserving judgment and we're not giving our opinion? Jamarcus Russell was a bust. Let's be honest. And to me, if you're going to take $55,000 out of a $74,000 donation, withdraw it, put it in a credit union, and withdraw it, I'm gonna give judgment right off the rip. What the hell are you doing?
Well, let's see an explanation off the bat. Let's wait.
There is none to me, Jack. Go ahead, Keith.
Maybe he was going to invest the money for the school to make more than $55,000. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe he's putting James. Maybe stocks. Stocks.
I'm a fan of LSU tremendously, and he came out of LSU, and I was highly disappointed in how he played and how his career ended up. And it's all his fault, man. He just came out of shape, and he was doing drugs outside. And I'm all for redemption. I mean, look, you see Michael situation. Everything's about redemption. This is years later. This is not like he just did this right after during the time when he was a bust. He's doing this at a high school level. Come on, man. That's just unfortunate, and I'm totally disappointed that this is happening. That you do this to kids, man. Come on, that says a level of character is really in the toilet. I'm just not there anymore. Come on.
Yeah, that is well said, and I agree with that 100%. You know, whether I listen. I mean, you're a volunteer coach, and maybe he thought he deserved. I don't know. I don't know what the reason is, but guess what? It's just wrong, and we will find out what the reason is. I guarantee you that when the lawsuit.
Well, with Jamarcus Russell as a player, the coach of the Raiders at the time, Lane Kiffin, didn't want him drafted number 1. He didn't want him as the pick, but it was an Al Davis, the owner of the Raiders, who insisted the Raiders take Jamarcus Russell because he thought he was going to be a franchise quarterback. And Davis wound up being wrong. And reportedly, Davis never paid Lane Kiffin. It's not the first time Davis didn't pay a coach. And some of these coaches don't even bother to sue because they could get a job elsewhere. And they think, what the heck? I don't want to go through the process of suing an owner.
Wasn't this the same draft that Rodgers dropped into the 20s? Wasn't it the same draft?
Brady Quinn, I think, fell down the list. Yeah, he was supposed to go second, and he went something like, 26? Whatever.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So we talked about the NFL getting sued by a bunch of for Sunday Ticket by a bunch of people and businesses. The NFL did get a ruling against it by the jury, $4 billion. Most of that going to the subscribers, some of that going to the business. But of course, that won't change this year as the NFL will appeal those decisions. So still this year coming up, you're going to still have to pay for Sunday Ticket and everything. Nothing's going to change until this gets settled. So they did lose anyway. So
you're never
anyway,
you're never stop paying to watch football these days. By the way, it doesn't matter what happens with a suit, you're going to pay somewhere. So this is, I mean, and by the way, this could get tripled if they get found in a violation of antitrust laws as well. So it could be almost $15 billion. So,
right.
But so let me get this straight. The purpose of the Sunday Ticket is to be able to watch every game at once. Split games. I mean, who could concentrate on all these split games at once? Wouldn't you rather watch one game and maybe switch the channel between plays to another game? I mean, I can't imagine concentrating on more than, 2 games at a time. And that's even a lot.
I watch a Red Zone. If I'm not watching the Patriots, I'm watching a Red Zone almost all the time, which, again, I'm getting all the games, the best part of every game. So.
Well, there you go. But as far as I would agree with Jack, as far as a fan goes, I want to see the Giants win or lose, and then I want to see local teams, and then I go for maybe the better teams. That's the way I view football anyway. If I'm the Giants aren't on, I'm watching the Patriots or the Jets or maybe the Eagles, and then after that it's who's the best, who's the better of the teams in the league. That's how I kind of watch football games. But the Sunday Ticket, of course, is offered by one distributor, and that's what the antitrust lawsuit was all about. So they lost, but that doesn't mean it's official yet, as it will be appealed. Good morning, Keith. Glad to. I've been in Jackson,
I've been here a while.
Hey, good to hear from Keith. But what is Rick? I couldn't hear from Rick. But what is it you're talking about, Rick? I'm on what?
Well, probably almost on everything you said today.
Jamarcus Russell? No. If it's Jamarcus Russell, I'm just saying maybe I haven't heard enough about this. There's nothing wrong with reserving a little judgment. If he's charged with something and he pleads not guilty, and I'm saying I just want to reserve judgment a bit longer, I don't think there's anything wrong with reserving judgment. It's like running the ball in football sometimes, kind of wanting to feel out the defense a bit more. I don't know.
And Rick is.
I'm against dealing with the kids. It's awful if he did that. It's absolutely awful. But has he had an explanation? That's what I want to know. I mean, has he come up with an explanation yet?
Well, I guess he has not. Yes. Well, I don't know if it's fair or not. It just, I don't even know why he would even attempt to do that. Anyways, Keith, I told you to have your top 5 quarterbacks, your 5 greatest quarterbacks of all time, a list ready for us. We're going to talk about it a little later in the show, and I guarantee you Steve Grogan is almost in the top 5 if Keith is given it.
He just missed the cut. It was close. I had to do a lot of research here. For me, number one's easy. It's Tom Brady. I put Montana second. I put Peyton Manning third. And I have John Elway fourth and Dan Marino fifth.
Wow.
Okay, so let's start with your first pick. You said easy.
Easy.
Now you say easy.
It's easy.
Okay, so you're going to tell me that there's no quarterback that could challenge Tom Brady for number one. That's what you're saying.
Well, one, Montana's the only guy that I would even give an argument to. Tom Brady's got seven. Tom Brady's got 7 Super Bowls and the numbers. We were talking about this Friday, right? Some people want to look at numbers and they didn't win, and it was for other factors. They were great quarterbacks, like Marino. Marino's on my list because he's a great quarterback, and didn't play on great teams.
So you're going to say, Keith, I think he played like 50 years. So that has something to do with him getting all those numbers. And secondly, there is another quarterback that won 7 out of 10 championships. Brady tied him. So now,
by the way, I didn't look that up. I had a guess it was Bart Starr, but who is it?
No, it's not. It's not Bart Starr. But anyway, it's Otto Graham. But anyway, if you consider the eras, the way you can't, the penalties or the rules to protect the quarterback and protect the receivers. I mean, if you put, let's say we put Y.A. Tittle in today's football, and he had all those, or Johnny Unitas, who you didn't mention, with all those new rules where you can't hit the quarterback, you can't touch his knee, you can't hit him high, you can't hit him low, you can't touch the receiver when he's going out, you can't hit him high anymore. I mean, you don't think that Y.A. Tittle and some of these older quarterbacks could have as good as numbers as Brady and Peyton Manning?
I do, but I don't know that I want to just, project that would happen. Now, listen, I will qualify my comments. All the guys you mentioned are worthy, and Elway and the number one guy, as far as I'm concerned, right? You get 1, 2, 3. You can make arguments for a lot of guys in that first spot, but to me, there's only 3 guys that belong in the top 3. The last 2, Elway and Marino. I did a lot of going back and forth, and Unitas was in play. Otto Graham was in play. Fran Tarkenton was in play. There's a lot of guys that you could argue could be in there. I'm not discounting any of their careers. They're great players. And again, the easy comment is more of me being a Patriot fan and the things I watched for 20 years. And again, we can talk about, yes, it's hard to compare eras, but you've asked us to do that. So we have to do exactly that. And I did take that into consideration. I don't know that Otto Graham could play in today's game. I don't know that. I really don't.
Really? You don't think now this was a dominant player, and we're not talking about an average quarterback or a good quarterback. We're talking about a quarterback that held the records until Fran Tarkenton broke them, and until Marino broke his. And not only Otto Graham passed for more yards than anybody even close in that era. Not only did he win 7 out of the 10 championships that he was in, he also had the highest quarterback percentage all the way until Joe Montana broke it. So
yeah, but the other quarterbacks weren't of the caliber that Brady played against either, by the way, when Otto Graham was playing. So those numbers were accumulated with lesser quarterbacks to give him competition at that time. So I can make that argument as well.
And I would counter that by saying it was a running league back then. It wasn't a passing league like it is today. They weren't throwing on first and second and third downs back then. And if they did, go ahead.
But that's exactly why I'm saying he held all those records. Nobody else was throwing the football. So
I think Unitas was throwing the ball. I think Connolly was throwing the ball. I think the throwing Dutchman was throwing the football. Not as much.
They're all good, very good, or great quarterbacks. Johnny Unitas, I had Johnny Unitas about 4 times in my top 5 before I took him out. Because there's a guy who played about 45 years too, as well. By the way,
that's true. That's true.
So again, they're all great quarterbacks, and it's hard to compare them. I'm really not knocking any of them. I'm really not. I almost dropped Manning out of my top 5, quite frankly, but
Peyton Manning could go either way. Well, I guess we could get let's kind of get into this. I don't want Keith to leave before we're done. So, James, you had a top 5 list that you talked about earlier, and Keith, I'm not attacking you. I'm just asking why you came to that. Why you came to them conclusions? I totally disagree with you that Otto Graham couldn't play in today's football. I think he. I don't know.
I said I don't know. I didn't say he couldn't. I didn't say he couldn't.
Okay, all right. So James, let me hear your top 5, and Keith's really going to give you a hard time because I gave him a hard time. Hopefully.
I think we're the same first 2. So I have Tom Brady number 1. I have Joe Montana number 2. These guys virtually to me are interchangeable because they're almost like the same guy. Otto Graham number 3. I have Fran Tarkenton number 4. And my surprise for number 5, I would surprise any one of you, is Warren Moon for number 5. And I'll tell you why I have Warren Moon number 5. First of all, he was supposed to be a wide receiver when he came into the league. He had to go to Canada and prove that he could play quarterback. So 5 of his 6 years, he won championships there. He got 20,000 yards, 144 touchdowns, came back to the league and lit it up. So I'm just saying, had he not played those years in Canada, maybe he would have lit it up in the NFL as well and been an even higher number. So I think I have an average there because of how his career started. So, I mean, if you put both numbers together, he's got over 80,000 yards, which is really up there with Drew Brees and Tom Brady. But I have him as my number 5 number 5 quarterback. 5th quarterback of all time.
Well,
because
you're not a whole
Canada. because well, at least it's not Michael Vick, but because he played in Canada and lit it up, that's why you put him at 5. I mean, is Doug Flutie in the top 5? Is Joe Theismann? Is he in the top 5 too? I mean, Joe Theismann played in the NFL, won more Super Bowls than Warren Moon did.
But Joe Theismann didn't play on the same level as Warren Moon. Yeah, I'm not going to put those two together. I definitely think it's unfortunate he had an injury that really ended his career, but he wasn't that great. He wasn't. He's not on the same level as Warren Moon.
Moon much better than Theismann for sure.
So you put Warren Moon over John Elway. You put him over Jim Kelly. You put him over and Jim Kelly.
I love those guys that you're talking about. Yes, I'm putting them there just because of the asterisk. That's it. That's the only reason. And it's hard because all those guys are great. I mean, it's a huge list. A lot of names that are interchangeable. That's the only reason I put them in that 5 is because of it's almost like the Negro League thing. It's just kind of similar. I mean, you can look at why did these guys play in the league, and maybe numbers would be differently had they played. So, I mean, I just think the same.
Yeah, right. And I'll put Buck Leonard over Willie Mays if you're telling me to rate baseball players.
Yeah. And would have had less football recruits. Listen, if you're going to count all those yards in Canada and throw them over, and we know Canada, I would say Canada is a little bit less than the NFL, wouldn't you?
A little.
Of course.
It's a
Warren competition just to prove that he can actually play the position. And then he got into the league and actually played the position at a high level. That's just my point. That's it. So, I mean, I agree that Canada's league is a lot less. I mean, but he dominated it. He dominated it. I mean, a lot of these guys, I'm pretty sure a lot of those guys that play now, or played before in the NFL would have did the same thing. My thing is there wasn't a fair take there to allow him to even have the opportunity to put his numbers up to any of these other greats. That's it.
That's a fair comment too. I mean, he didn't get the opportunity. He didn't choose to go to Canada. He chose to go there to play quarterback. Yeah.
What do you
So
mean?
you're talking about career numbers of the naked eye, or just knowing
What I'm saying, Jack, because we got to kind of take both into consideration, right? You got to take the stats because that's really what the quarterback did during his career. And, games won is really not a quarterback stat. It's a team stat. But you got to take in consideration the guy leading his team to championships and Super Bowls and being, having a good team. Terry Bradshaw will come to mind as a leader of the Pittsburgh Steelers, but his stats aren't close to some of these other quarterbacks that played in his era to say he's one of the greatest. And some people may disagree and say Terry Bradshaw is one of the greatest of all time. And I couldn't really say no to that. I mean, we could debate it, but if you're just going off pure stats, then you would have to say Marino is in the top 5 easily. Well, not easily because other players have surpassed him, but he would be in the top 5. But I think you got to take in consideration championships, and that's one reason why I think Warren Moon wouldn't be in the top 5. James thinks he is. I mean, that's it's not a.
I think it's a bad stretch to say Warren Moon's in the top 5. I wouldn't even put him ahead. And he was very good, Warren Moon. Very, very good.
He's a Hall of Famer, so it's not like he stunk.
Yeah, but he was, I don't think he was as good as Jim Kelly. He wasn't as good as Steve Young. You could make a comparison and put him in that bracket with those two, but he'd be on the bottom part of the bracket. I would place him Warren Moon basically on a similar level to a Phil Simms on Eli Manning.
I'm going to have to push back on that.
I would even put him behind Ben Roethlisberger. He's certainly behind Aaron Rodgers. Warren Moon.
Those teams that Steve Young and Jim Kelly had on both sides of the field were some of the greatest teams that ever played a game.
It's a Warren Moon, the quarterback, with a 35-3 lead over the Buffalo Bills in the playoff game and then couldn't do a thing. And played very poorly as the Bills waged the greatest comeback in NFL history. He was the quarterback.
That was great. That was great.
I think great quarterbacks rally their team somewhat, at least. He was basically a spectator as Buffalo came back.
That's why John Elway's on my list, by the way.
Frank Reich was a backup, but he was driving a Maserati. That team was that's one of their 4-year stretch when they went to 4 Super Bowls. I'm not saying that Warren Moon doesn't deserve some flack for some of the losses, but I mean, that team you're talking about they lost to was incredible.
You would even put Warren Moon in the same league as Patrick Mahomes. I mean, I shouldn't say the same league because Warren Moon is a Hall of Fame. He was a great quarterback. But Patrick, do you think one GM in the league, if they were both 22 years old, I always like to give this example, would take Warren Moon over Patrick Mahomes if they both had their whole career ahead of them? Now, one GM in the NFL would take Warren Moon over Patrick Mahomes.
We're talking hindsight, 2020. No one really knew who Patrick Mahomes was, except
a couple
of coaches.
We know what he is now, though.
Yes, but if I'm taking
Warren Moon is better than Patrick Mahomes.
What I know now, I would take Pat Mahomes over Warren Moon.
So he should be on your list ahead of Warren Moon then, if that's the case.
I guess. I mean, I think it's not a fair assessment to say because Pat Mahomes' career is not done. I mean, he's won 3 Super Bowls and he's had probably arguably one of the greatest coaches that go along with him as well. A lot of that matters. You can't name a great coach.
That great coach didn't win a Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles. He hasn't won it without Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. I mean, I just have to point that out. See, if we're going to give the bulk of the credit to Andy Reid, and Reid should get some credit, of course. Reid took a team to the Super Bowl with the Eagles, but they didn't win it. With Mahomes and the Chiefs, they went to 4 and won 3.
So
yeah, but sometimes it doesn't go your way like that. I'm just saying. I mean, John Elway didn't win 2 Super Bowls until the latter part of his career with the stacked team. I mean, he's had terrible teams in the beginning, and he dragged teams to Super Bowls, but they just couldn't. They couldn't.
Right. But Warren Moon did not drag a team to the Super Bowl. Keith, let me get you in here because I listen. It's debate. I think number 5 position is debatable, and I know you got to get out of here, Keith. But Warren Moon, would he make your top 5?
No.
Okay. All right.
No, he's a great player, but I don't think Warren Moon would make my top 10, quite frankly. But he's a great player.
I would agree with that. I agree he's a great player too.
I may have to carry this over a little bit on my show a little bit. I may throw that out there. This will start great debate. So
putting Warren Moon in the top 5 is like saying Robin Yount, the Hall of Fame, is in the top 5 baseball players of all time. Even top 10, for example, is a Hall of Fame of, but I'm sorry to come down on you like that, James. But,
Okay.
I think it's a real stretch, Warren Moon.
I like James a lot, but I'm not sorry to come down on him.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. I can take it. The children are pretty heavy, man. I can take it.
Oh, I know.
All right. We'll let Keith get out of here. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Jack's top 5 since he's beating everybody up. Take it easy,
I'm going to watch that later. Have a great day, guys.
All right, Keith. Thanks a lot. Okay. We'll be right back after these messages, guys.
This is a Huddle Sports Network broadcast. You can find us on Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Facebook, and of course YouTube. Get all your NFL news here first.
Hello, this is Paul Semendinger, award-winning author and the host of the Dr. Sem Yankee Show and the Start Spreading the News podcast. And you are watching The Big Football Show, the very best football show in the entire world. And it's here on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. Enjoy.
Thank you, Dr. Paul. Of course, the comments keep coming in. Thank you, James, for making that Warren Moon in your top 5. Listen, I don't know what to say. I mean, it's a surprise. That's all I gotta say. It's a surprise. So,
I don't think James really believes what he said. I think he's trying to create a buzz. You get that on social media in this day and age. Someone trying to get a little bit of controversy going. So that's what I think James is doing.
Not
okay,
true.
All right, so
I'm curious who Rick would take ahead of who, Warren Moon or Kirk Cousins. Rick's a Vikings fan, so I'm curious who would take it next.
All right, so Jack, we set the table for your top 5. I mean, I know you don't have a list prepared, but I know you could do it off the top.
No. I mean, my top 5 today could change tomorrow because, in all honesty, I have some quarterbacks who are so close. It depends my mood on a given day. It's never set in stone. I just want to backtrack to the Otto Graham argument. There's no way of telling what Otto Graham would have done today. He played in the past. He was great during his era. If you had to compare era against era, then you could make an argument for Otto Graham, how great he was in his era. But are we prorating it that way? I mean, if that's the case, I could talk about baseball pitchers and say Cy Young was the greatest of all time because he won 511 games. I mean, but we wouldn't put him amongst the greatest pitchers ever. But you could point to his win total and then make that argument. But I didn't see Otto Graham play. I know he accomplished a great deal when football was, in a sense, in its infancy compared to today. So I'm mainly talking about, the Super Bowl era. I mean, Y.A. Tittle, I mean, he doesn't compare to the all-time greats. Had he played today, who knows for sure what he, might have done. Who knows what Sonny Jurgensen might have done and guys like that.
Okay.
So, but you want to stick to those guys. You want to say why Kittle's top 5, or something like that. He lost continuously in championship games where he didn't perform well, but whatever. During his era, okay?
Right.
And let me just say something. Fran Tarkenton, I did see a number of times play. A wonderful quarterback, okay? A wonderful, wonderful quarterback, outstanding. He's not on a short list of the top 5. That's absurd. I mean, I don't know who I'd take between him and Warren Moon, to be honest about it. Tarkenton's more accomplished, having gone to 3-4 Super Bowls, in which he performed very poorly in those games. The steel curtain kept him in check where he couldn't do a thing, and we could hear, oh, what a great defense the Steelers had. But I could guarantee you they wouldn't have kept Patrick Mahomes nearly in the same check. They would have at least some success.
That's very hard to say. That's to say that a Pittsburgh Steelers defense would not keep Patrick Mahomes in check. I mean, there are other defenses. There are other defenses last year during the regular seasons that kept Patrick Mahomes in check. He didn't have one of his best seasons of all time last year. And in the Super Bowl, he wasn't the greatest quarterback I've ever seen in the Super Bowl. So there I disagree with you with. I think if Fran Tarkenton, let me finish. You went on for a little bit. I think if Fran Tarkenton was the quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings when they played the Chiefs and Joe Kapp was the quarterback, the Vikings would have won that Super Bowl. My opinion.
Well, Vikings would have been beaten just as badly with.
I don't think so, Jack. I don't think
it was better. Listen, Joe
better.
Kapp had a match.
There was no comparison. Wait. There's no comparison to Joe Kapp to Fran Tarkenton. I think you would agree with that.
Yeah, I'll agree.
Okay, so I would imagine Fran Tarkenton would have been able to throw the ball where Joe Kapp was not a real good passer. He was not one of the best passers of all time, where Fran Tarkenton held records for years until Dan Marino broke them. So what I'm saying, Jack, is if Fran Tarkenton was, and of course this is just, I'm just giving you my opinion, but I think it's a pretty good opinion that if Fran Tarkenton played in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, I think the Vikings would have won that Super Bowl because he sure can pass better than Joe Kapp.
I mean, I know I make comparisons to other sports. I'll do it again. Fran Tarkenton was the equivalent of Tom Glanville, Gaylord Perry, Phil Negro, long career, lots of wins, but those guys don't come into the discussion of the greatest pitchers of all time. They just don't come into the discussion at all about it. And if you're going to compare those guys to Sandy Koufax, Roger Clemens, etc., it doesn't cut it. Not at all. Fran Tarkenton was a wonderful quarterback. And if you compare him as a runner to Patrick Mahomes, for example, or the other running quarterbacks, no comparison. Fran Tarkenton was a scrambler. He'd run around in the backfield to try to create some time to throw the ball. He wasn't a running quarterback who would pick up yardage. So
I would agree to you to a point, but he did lead all quarterbacks in rushing for years also, Jack, because he did have to run the ball every now and then. Quarterbacks
weren't allowed to run with the ball then by their coaches.
So, Jack, listen, Otto Graham almost ran for as many touchdowns as he threw. So let's hear your top 5. You're picking apart everybody's top 5. Let's hear your top 5.
Well, I think if you're going based on accomplishment in large part, in addition to the naked eye, what he's done on the field, you got to give it to Tom Brady based on accomplishment. Going to 10 Super Bowls in this era. I mean, and winning 7 of them. And he's played, for the most part, pretty well in the Super Bowls. Not all. He hasn't played well in all of them when they beat the Rams. Basically the defense, in the second Super Bowl against the Giants, had he gotten a first down at the end of the game, they could have maybe milked the clock out, won that game. So it wasn't invincible, but even in that unbeaten season where they lost that game, people forget he let the Patriots down the field and he put them ahead with 2 minutes and 6 seconds left. If the Patriot defense held, we'd be talking about how great Tom Brady was again, waging the comeback and would have been Super Bowl MVP again, et cetera, et cetera. But I think based on accomplishments, you go to 10 Super Bowls, that's insane. Second, I would go today at least with Patrick Mahomes. Okay, he's active, he's playing, so it's not a popular choice. But when you look how great the guy's been just outstanding. He's went to 4 Super Bowls already, and then won 3. Went to 4 already, and it's won 3. And then it gets kind of like a little sticky here. I mean, it's hard to leave out Peyton Manning because basically he was on the same level as Brady. You know, he went to 4 Super Bowls, won 2, but one with 4 different coaches. And something's to be said about that, you know, different coordinators, different systems. And Peyton Manning was a great regular season quarterback, you know? So, and then it starts becoming just, you know, a little sticky. Dan Marino, as much as I want to put him in, he was great. You're not going to get a better pure passer than Dan Marino. The bottom line is he came up flat in a few big playoff games. So I got to put Joe Montana in there. Okay, I'll put Montana. I put him third. You want to know something? I'll put Montana third ahead and put Manning fourth. But I got to point out, Bill Belichick said when Peyton Manning retired, Peyton Manning was the best quarterback he even coached against, and Belichick coached against Joe Montana. Keep that in mind. But I'll still give Montana that little edge. Because it's easy to forget before Brady went on these Super Bowl runs, okay, people were calling Montana the greatest quarterback of all time. And if I want to, you know, expand the eras, take a safe pick and go with number 5, you know, if I want to bypass Elway and Marino, yeah, I could go with Johnny Unitas if I want to go in a different era. You know, Johnny Unitas was on teams that played in 2 Super Bowls in the beginning of the Super Bowl era. He was basically injured against the Jets, even though he saw playing time. His arm was shot. He couldn't even throw the ball. And then he played a little in Super Bowl 5, and that ironically got injured during the game. But Johnny Unitas during his era was really a clear-cut number 1. Some people would say Bart Starr with the Packers, but Starr was more of a system quarterback with the Packers. Not that he wasn't a great quarterback, but more of a system quarterback. That's a nice debate. We were talking about Tarkenton before. Bart Starr against Fran Tarkenton. And even you mentioned Terry Bradshaw. Bottom line is 4-0 in Super Bowls. You could say he was a good bus driver, Bradshaw, with the Steelers. Oh, well, anyone could have quarterbacked and done this or that. But maybe we're underrating Bradshaw based on his accomplishments. And, of course, there's the X factor. If I want to throw in Aaron Rodgers or Brett Favre, I mean, is that a bad pick necessarily if I put either guy at number 5? I mean, they do compare to, you know, Marino and Elway. You can make a debate. Either guy was actually even a little better if you want.
Good morning, Jeremy. I got a couple things from your top 5. First of all, Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is not even close as far as individual statistics to Brett Favre, to people that I wouldn't even have in a top 5 of all time. If his career ended today, and you could say in his prime, he's a top 5 quarterback or top 3 quarterback, whatever you want to do. But I wouldn't say he's the top 5 greatest quarterbacks of all time because it's too soon. If he doesn't get injured, if he stays with the Chiefs and the Chiefs continue winning, of course he's in the discussion. And, Brady, Montana, Manning, Unitas only got to 1 Super Bowl because of Earl Monroe. Bob Greasy, you could say the same thing. Both times.
Brady only got to 1 Super Bowl, Montana and the Mannings, unless that's his order.
I think he's
John Unitas went to 2 Super Bowls. Not 1, he went to 2. Super Bowl 3 and 5, yeah.
Yeah, he did. And both times, one time he came in, as you said, hurt, and the next time he left the game hurt. So he really didn't participate in the whole Super Bowl.
And keep in mind, before the Super Bowl, Johnny Unitas won 2 NFL championships in 1958, 1959. It just wasn't called the Super Bowl. So I can make the argument that Johnny Unitas went to 4 championship games, just changed the name from Super Bowl to championship game, and he's won 3 world NFL championships.
Jeremy's mad at you. I think he's mad at you. Johnny Unitas won the Super Bowl because of Earl Morrall. I guess that's the period he was talking about. Anyway, Earl
Morrall backup quarterbacks. I'm sorry to cut in. If we did a list of 5 greatest backup quarterbacks of all time, Morrall is going to. I'm not sure where he makes the list, but he makes the list.
I think he's top 2 at least. Maybe Don Strock you could put in there. Maybe there's a couple others.
Better than Don Strock.
I agree. I agree. Right, too. I agree. So I'm going to give you my top 5. And Johnny Unitas was the first quarterback to throw over 4,000 yards in 1 year. So that's how good Johnny Unitas. And again, that was in a running era. Now, you made an argument for Unitas going to 2 championships. Well, here I go with Otto Graham. So in Otto Graham, if he was just a quarterback, now remember, Jim Brown didn't play with Otto Graham during this time. He retired 2 years before Jim Brown became a Cleveland Brown. And the Browns, of course, went on and won a few more championships. When he came into the league in his rookie year, when the Browns first came into the NFL, his first year, he takes them to the championship. He takes them to 7 out of 10 championships. I mean, it never was done until Tom Brady went ahead and tied his record. If you want to count an NFL championship to a Super Bowl, you're talking 7 championships or 7 Super Bowls at that time out of 10. Brady ties him. I mentioned he was the best quarterback rating at 112.2, I think it is. And Joe Montana finally beats him in 1989 with a better passer rating. He had all the records until Fran Tarkenton went ahead and tied him. So if you're gonna say as an individual and as championships, Brady would be the one that you would say would be first or second. To me, those are the first 2 quarterbacks, right? Because Brady played a lot longer than Otto Graham did. Otto Graham was a double threat. He could run. He ran for almost as many touchdowns as he passed. A lot of games he'll throw for 2 touchdowns or run for 2 touchdowns. He returned a 90-yard punt for a touchdown. I mean, this guy was an unbelievable athlete. And when you have somebody great in one era, there is no reason why they can't be great in this era. Jim Brown would be great in this era. I think Johnny Unitas would be great in this era. So I think the top 2, I put Otto Graham because of the rules. You can't touch the quarterback. You can't touch the wide receiver. You can't hit him after 5 yards. Hell, they used to knock you down after 5 yards a long time ago. The receiver's all gone. Now what are you going to do? These have all changed over the years and have prevented quarterbacks back in the past the way they could pass today. And as I said before, they throw 3 downs now. They don't even try to establish the running game sometimes. Sometimes they make the pass to establish the running game. So it's a totally different era. But I think Otto Graham would be my top 2. So Tom Brady or Otto Graham. Third, I got to put John Elway. John Elway, not only did he have the arm, not only was he also a dual threat, he pulled the Denver Broncos to 3 Super Bowl appearances before he won 2. He was MVP of at least one of those Super Bowls that I remember. So John Elway, to me, if you could say a quarterback actually willed a team to a Super Bowl, he did it 3 times. And of course, when he got a better team, as James says, he wins 2. So Elway's got to be up there, and I'm kind of going errors. Joe Montana, believe it or not, his stats, his overall stats, as far as yards passing, is not up there with Peyton Manning, with Tom Brady. He's only got like 40,000 passing yards. But how can you argue with a guy that was maybe one of the most accurate quarterbacks in history, the comeback wins he had, the 4-0 in Super Bowls? I think you combine them both, he's in the top 5. And my last one, and this was a tough one too, Jack, I even thought about Patrick Mahomes, and I said, man, if he played maybe 5 more years at this same rate, he may be number 1. I mean, he's just a great young quarterback. And going through all the quarterbacks, man, I had to give it to Peyton Manning, and because he did win Super Bowls with two different teams. He has 70,000 yards passing, and he beat out Montana for the percentage passing. He has like 65.8. Montana had like 63. Very accurate quarterback. Great competitor. I think all these guys were great competitors, and I think that's what sets them apart from the other quarterbacks, right? I mean, they will to win. They will a team to win, and even if the team is not as good as the other team, they'll win because of these quarterbacks. And this is why I think that, that's my top 5. And you could say Otto Graham may not be a good choice in your opinion, or maybe, I don't know, maybe Peyton Manning, maybe there's somebody better, but I think it's a pretty good top 5. So.
Yeah, I'm not arguing so much, but I go according to reality. Not that what you're saying is wrong, in their rating, but when I was a young man, and John Unitas was a quarterback, in the NFL, and people would talk about at that time who the greatest quarterback was of all time, they wouldn't be debating who was better, Unitas or Graham. I mean, right. Johnny U was called the greatest quarterback of all time by many, many people when he was playing in his prime. It wasn't kind of up for debate, Otto Graham's accomplishments are wonderful. After they're outstanding, they're super. You compliment them to the hilt, but it wasn't so debatable at the time. Maybe because the NFL became more sophisticated late. I'm not saying he couldn't have been good in today's game. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying what the debate was at the time. So much is about perception, and so much could change. Let me throw this at you now. We talk about top 5. Let's say Aaron Rodgers leads the Jets to the Super Bowl victory this year. He's the man. He leads them to the victory. All of a sudden, Aaron Rodgers becomes a viable choice. I'm not saying he necessarily should be for top 5. I can put him in the top 5 without a major debate if he leads the Jets to the Super Bowl. Had Brett Favre led the Vikings to a Super Bowl win, and he actually came close to getting them there, what would we be saying about Brett Favre? We forget certain guys. It's not just about winning Super Bowls. I think we can agree Marino, we would put him ahead of Troy Aikman, right? Troy Aikman won 3 Super Bowls. Marino didn't win any. You would actually take Aikman ahead of Marino.
Jack, I don't know. I would have to look at stats in that, but you're talking.
You've seen them play. What you're going to look at?
I know. I saw Marino play, but Marino didn't have every game of Marino's wasn't great. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think Marino was a great passer, a great thrower of the football, but you got to put leadership in there too, Jack. You gotta. I mean, would you agree? Let me give you try and give you an example here. Would you think that Steve Young, if he was the starting quarterback of the 49ers, would have won 4 or 5 Super Bowls during Montana's age?
I actually, if I was pushed to a yes and no answer, I would say yes.
So
I think he would have won. Yeah, I think he would have won, had he been there instead of Montana. I would rank Montana ahead of Young. Right. But I think Young was good enough, that they would have.
So, I mean, we're playing
we'll never know.
Right. We're just playing just suppose. And listen, a different team, the Dallas Cowboys, I think, had a better team than the Dolphins, right, James? I think they had a better defense. I think they had a better running game. I mean, there's so much you could take into consideration, and Marino had a lot of records. So I'm not saying that he's better. That Aikman's better than him, but maybe he was a better leader. It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell. If I was in the locker room,
to put Aikman ahead of Marino still is almost like blasphemous because he's just super talented. He far superseded. I mean, I know he played longer, but still the numbers are just astronomically different. And I think it's almost like saying, going back to what Jack was saying about Terry Bradshaw and whether or not, I mean, his numbers were mediocre, but he had a great team. I mean, totally. And they had a great defense. I don't think Marino's team has ever really had a great defense. Defenses usually get you the ball back and give you more opportunities. I don't know. I just don't think that that I would put. I mean, and Dallas has always had. I mean, during Aikman's era, they've always had a top 10 defense. They were like very good. And it's like, I mean, I guess I wouldn't put Emmitt Smith. I know we're probably not talking about running backs here. I wouldn't put Emmitt Smith ahead of Barry Sanders. I just think Barry Sanders is a far better, superior talent as a running back, and it showed. The first guy to get his first 3 seasons, 1,500 yards. Three seasons in a row. So again, I would take Marino any day over Troy Aikman. And I get what you're saying about the leadership.
I'm not going to disagree. I'm not going to disagree with you. I'm not saying Troy Aikman was better. I'm just saying that you've got to take certain things in consideration.
No, Mac, you're debating it. Like you need to analyze it. Now, didn't you see the guys play? Shouldn't you have an opinion?
Yes, I did. And I listen. I saw Troy Aikman make some unbelievable throws. I seen Marino lead the team down the field and unbelievable passes, and he had a great setup and a great arm. I get it, but they never won a Super Bowl. I think they only won 1 championship.
Mac, you can't have it both ways. You always say it's a team
all right,
game.
So you're telling me you would tell me you would say Dan Marino is better than Fran Tarkenton, right? That would be your opinion.
Not even close. Not even close.
So, but Fran Tarkenton on his shoulders, the offense on his shoulders.
No, they didn't take the offense on his shoulders.
Well, who was his weapons?
Chuck Foreman. He had a great running back.
He wasn't great. He was good. He was a very good running back.
Outstanding Chuck Foreman.
He was a very good running back. He wasn't outstanding, Jack. He was very good. Tarkenton made that team go to Super Bowl.
It was their defense, the purple people eaters, that got the Vikings there more than their offense.
Well, then how did Tarkenton get all them numbers then, Jack? I guess he just threw it around the backyard and they counted him, I guess.
He was a heck of a quarterback.
So
Tarkenton was a heck of a quarterback. He's just not on the short list of all-time greats.
According to James's, and I think he's in the top 10 easy, but that's beside the point. I want to get to your Unitas Otto Graham comparison. You said Johnny Unitas at that time, that was the quarterback. First of all, Otto Graham played before.
Of people.
Otto Graham played before Johnny Unitas. Johnny Unitas was in the greatest game ever played, supposed to be the NFL championship. There was no Unitas also went to a couple Super Bowls where he didn't play that well, but he was a great quarterback. I'm not taking nothing against Unitas, but you're comparing 2 different decades. And then you're comparing a quarterback that played in the Super Bowl compared to when there was no Super Bowls.
No, I'm not comparing. I'm saying what the consensus was. I'm not saying what I was thinking. I'm saying the consensus amongst people when Johnny Unitas was in his prime is that he was the greatest quarterback of all time. That was the consensus at the time. Just like when Montana won his 4th Super Bowl, the consensus was Montana is now the greatest of all time. Just consensus, not my opinion necessarily. Same thing with Michael Jordan. When he retired, the consensus was, and maybe still is, that he was the greatest basketball player of all time. It doesn't mean he is. It doesn't mean that's my opinion necessarily, but that's a consensus.
I get it. And you are right, Jeremy. He didn't have a complete team. I know their record was pretty good, but listen, Marino was the reason why that they took the Dolphins to the Super Bowl. And to me, Fran Tarkenton on the offensive side of the ball, because the purple people eater, you're talking 76, Purple People Eater were together in the 60s. They were kind of getting a little old in the tooth when Tarkenton was taking them to the Super Bowls.
They were peak form. They just weren't good enough to Viking teams with Tarkenton wasn't a difference maker in the big games.
Well,
it was a heck of a Tarkenton had a great career. I respect him. I just don't put him anywhere near the short list of the best.
And 3 championships, I think he beat the Cowboys twice and the Rams once as the quarterback of the Vikings. Pretty good. Anyway, I want to get
he's pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good. He's pretty good. So there is no more, and we're going to get to the AFC South. We're going to talk about them a little bit here in a minute. Well, our thoughts are on it. A little bit more news on the NFL. There is no more supplemental draft. Now, James, do you know what the supplemental draft is in the NFL?
It's virtually just like having an additional, getting extra players that, towards the end. I don't know. They're not, there's never like great players left over, but it's like, I can see why they doing away with it. It was never of any real true benefit. It's just like towards the end, and they allow teams pretty much to I guess, I don't know. It's really hard to understand. I'll be honest with you, but it's not great. It was never seen any great player come out.
Well,
isn't it also if a franchise hires a black head coach, they get like an additional draft pick, like a 3rd rounder, like an extra pick on top of that. Yeah, they had that too.
Okay, so we'll bring in the Philly sports guy. How we doing today, Pads? Good to have you aboard. We're talking about the breaking news that happened this week. There's no more supplemental draft. No one's been taken in a supplemental draft in the last 5 years. The last player to be taken, let me see if I can find it here real quick, was a defensive back from the Cardinals, Arizona Cardinals, where let me get to the guy's name. Jalen Thompson was the defense last one taken 5 years ago. The biggest players of note that were taken in the supplemental draft: Bernie Kosar, Chris Carter, Josh Gordon. There have been some good players that were, Chris Carter, I think, is a Hall of Famer. If he's not, I'd be surprised. But anyway, there have been some good players taken in the supplemental draft. So that's all gone, Pags. So we're breaking down the AFC South. What your thoughts are on it this week. And of course, the AFC South is the Texans, the Jags, the Colts, and the Titans. And James, I'll let you go first and tell me who you think, what order they'll finish in and why.
Okay. So the Houston Texans will probably be number 1 again. And I just think that they surprised everybody. Of course, everybody's going to bring their best at them this year because nobody was really expecting them to do anything. But I still think they're for real. I think they have a talented quarterback. They have talented wide receivers there. They have a good court. They got a running back there. They beefed up their defense. They got the defensive end out of Minnesota. Daniel, I forgot the guy's last name, but anyway, he's great defensive end, and I think they're going to be really good. They'll probably win 10, 11 games again. Number 2, I'm surprised I'm going to say the Titans. I think the Titans are going to be actually pretty good. I think that the quarterback is decent, and I think, putting talent around him is going to help him. I have the Jaguars 3, and then I have the Colts 4. And I think that the Titans probably win about 9, 10 games. Jaguars maybe 7, 8 games. Colts, I don't think they're going to do well. I like Richardson, but I think he says his injuries were in college. His injuries have transferred to the NFL, and it may still be the same. So we'll see how, if he can stay healthy, I would put them higher, but I'm questionable about his health, and that makes a big difference because the quarterback, obviously, as you know, is probably the most important position on football. So I'd see them at the bottom.
Okay, and as I said, I don't know if Pags is a connection. If you can hear me now or not, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing well. Yeah, I'm having a little bit of connection issue being out in Vegas, but it's I'm getting ready to go home. I think. They've already pushed my flight back, so that's why I'm even on right now.
I hear you, buddy. Okay, we're going over the AFC South. Who you think will finish? What order, Pags, and a little bit of reason why. I mean, I know you could probably do that off the top of your head. I know you coming into it and we're throwing it at you, but I think you could do this off the top of your head.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think Houston retakes it. I think that they have really taken hold of their coach's plan. They have really turned that franchise around very, very quickly. It really has been amazing. They have obviously the quarterback is a little bit of a stud, and he won a playoff game. So now he's probably flying high a little bit here. And I think that division is a little on the soft side, like as far as just in general, like it's just not as strong as like the AFC East should have been last year. You know what I mean? So I feel like that they should be number one. I still have the Jags number two. Lawrence is, with that contract is going to have some expectations. They just don't have any weapons for him yet. So I think that's going to be part of the problem there. I don't know that they're going to make the playoffs. I think that they're going to just miss. But I mean, they're going to be right in that mix. I think they're going to be like to get that third wild card possibility. We'll see how everybody else does in the AFC. Then I think it's going to be a fight for the bottom between the Colts and the Titans. I think they both stink. I think Richardson for the Colts is not going to really pan out. I mean, obviously they didn't have an offensive line, so he got hurt last year. They didn't really do much to strengthen it. They did grab a couple of small pieces, but I don't know if that's going to be enough yet. And the Titans, I think, are just going to be treading water this year, learning a new system and a new way of doing things. I think that there was such a way about the way the Titans did things last year and for the previous few years that it's such a transition that they're going to flounder a little bit here. So I think that they're moving in the right direction, but they're going to have a season where they're really down and out.
All right, Jack, let's see what you got as far as your AFC South. What your thoughts are.
Yeah, this isn't definite. My final predictions are before the season begins, but from a distance now, I mean, it's hard to go against the Houston Texans. The only thing I question, are they going to next season be what the Jacksonville Jaguars were last season? Because the Jaguars made the playoffs a couple of years ago. They beat the Chargers in a playoff game, and we're thinking the Jaguars are team of the future. They're ready to take the next step, much as we're thinking about the Texans this year. And then last year, the Jaguars lose 4 of their last 5 games, and it all comes apart at the end of the year, and they miss the playoffs. Is that going to be the case with the Texans? The Texans have got a big weapon that they're receiving, Stephon Diggs. And you would think that C.J. Stroud's development will continue. But, these guys who have good rookie years sometimes take a backward step. I don't think that'll be the case with C.J. Stroud. I think their head coach, DeMeco Ryans, built a really good defense. So they're the favorites to win. You got to go with Jacksonville second, maybe even by default. I mean, I agree with Pax. I don't think that high of Anthony Richardson. Not only is he perhaps injury prone, he got injured last year, was out the year, but even if he stays healthy, how good is he really? I mean, he got drafted because he has great potential. He's a really good running quarterback, supposedly. But Anthony Richardson's got to learn to play the position. He tries to will his team to victory. Like, he'll carry the ball. He'll try to always go for the extra 2-3 yards when he should be going down. And he leaves himself in the spot of getting injured there. And I'm surprised Pax is so low on the Colts, considering they have one of his Eagle coordinators as their head coach. And last place, I have to say the Texans were Will Levis there. I don't see them contending at all, but who knows?
Well, I mean, I guess I'm going to go with Houston Texans too. I mean, in the playoff game, it looked like C.J. Stroud got figured out a little bit. You know, he didn't have a good playoff game. They get Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs could be as much trouble off the field as he could be on the field. And as you saw last year, Buffalo, Josh Allen stopped throwing to him. And there's reasons for that. Yeah, he's double covered, but the great wide receivers will find a way to get open anyway. So is Stephon Diggs going to be a big plus, or is he going to be a problem? Is he going to be I don't know. He seems to be a problem everywhere he is. But I still think, as you said, I like the coach. I think that if C.J. Stroud does take a step up, they win that division. Believe it or not, I'm going to shock everyone. I'm taking the Colts to come in second. I don't have that much faith in the Jaguars. I like the dual running threat with Taylor and with Richardson. Richardson is not injury prone. He had one injury so far. He's had less. You could say Aaron Rodgers is injury prone too. He got hurt before he went on the field. That doesn't make sense. So yes, he does try to run with the ball when he probably should go down. So does Lamar Jackson. So does Josh Allen. I mean, and I'm not comparing them to these guys, but that's his running style. So that's what he's going to do. I like the Colts defense. I think they have a pretty good defense. I think them and the Jaguars are going to be, I think second place is up for grabs. Them and the Jags. The Jags were one-dimensional last year. They lost 5 out of the last 6 games. Trevor Lawrence gets hurt. They're like the second in the league of no rushing yards or less. They're getting thrown back. They got to get that running game going for the Jags to have a shot at taking first place. And I agree with you guys as far as the Titans. They lost their big running back. Levis is a young kid. He's got a lot to learn, and they're just rebuilding. So I think they're going to be last. But I wouldn't be surprised to see the Colts giving the Jags a run for their money in second this year. I really would. So that's my thoughts on the AFC South so far. Any surprises that you think? Do you think C.J. Stroud takes a step back, as Shaq say might happen, Pags? Do you think it's possible that he has that sophomore slump and that maybe the teams watching all that film on him and stuff come up with some kind of rush on him or something like they did in the playoffs, like the Ravens did?
Mm-hmm. So what I do like about Houston more than anybody else, than any other team in that division, is their offensive line. Their offensive line is better. And when that makes it better, I think that even if he was to take a small step backwards, the amount of weapons they happen to have there now with Diggs included. You had a bunch of rookies that were just growing. Now you've got a veteran presence with Stephon Diggs. And as long as he stays away from the ladies, that he should be a really good asset to them. And that's usually what the problem is with Stephon Diggs. He likes to get himself involved outside of the locker room, and that's where he becomes a little bit of an issue. That being said, I think that even if C.J. Stroud does make a step backwards, as long as it's not a significant step backwards, like it's not like a Jalen Hurts from Super Bowl season to the following season where things aren't working the same way, then I think that they're a shoe-in to win that division.
Okay. And I pretty much, I think everybody agrees with that. Everybody's taking the Texans. So that's what we're looking like. And we will give our official picks and the breakdowns before the season starts. We're just kind of going through and taking a look after the draft and some free agency moves where we think they'll end up. The ESPY Awards came out, and it's a big deal because ESPN covers all sports. I mean, they talk about a place that just owns everything, split up ESPN, right? Like they did the Sunday Ticket. I mean, they run the whole thing. So I want to go over some of the awards with you. We'll take a look at the NFL first, and I got some awards. And I think Pags will enjoy these too. Some awards that the nominees are nominated from that make no sense to me. But I think it's because of inclusion and because of political correctness. Some of these are out there. But let's look at the NFL first. They got the best NFL player last year: Myles Garrett, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Patrick Mahomes and McCaffrey. And James, let me get your thoughts. Out of those players, I mean, different positions, the significant. They're not going MVP now. This is the best player. Who would you think is the best player out of those candidates?
I'm going to go with Patrick Mahomes. You mentioned his name in there?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely going to go with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, whether or not, I like the other picks in Myles Garrett defensively, but they didn't show up when it mattered most in the playoffs against the Texans. And Christian McCaffrey, offensive player, but he meant a lot to his team, I think. But Patrick Mahomes just shows day in, day out why he's the best player in the league, totally. And I think he's deserving of that award, just based on. Again, they lost Tyreek Hill. He really didn't have a great weapon like that to throw to, but he utilized what he had and made players better. I think that matters too as well, and then also leadership. I just think he's deserving of the award.
So, Pags, Mahomes probably had one of his worst seasons last year of his career. They had to depend on the defense and running game to a large extent to get to the Super Bowl. And even the Super Bowl, he made some great passes, but you could say the running game and the defense really held it down. So we're talking about last year now. Did you agree that Patrick Mahomes was the best player?
Well, it really, even though there are 4 people on that list, there's 2 people that really are in that conversation, and it is McCaffrey and Mahomes. You could say Lamar Jackson, except for the fact of that an AFC Championship game, where he got blown out and stunk it up. Patrick Mahomes may have had his worst season, but how many of those were drops? How many of those were the receiver's faults because he was working with no talent? Truth of the matter is that I think McCaffrey wins this. As much as I like Mahomes there, and I think that Mahomes is absolutely in the conversation, and it really is a toss-up. I think it's McCaffrey that wins it. I think that all in all, he had the overall better season than Mahomes did. Even though Mahomes won the Super Bowl, without McCaffrey, that team doesn't go to the Super Bowl. And when McCaffrey was hurt, they lost 3 games in a row. So I think when it comes down to meaning most to your team, also doing what you're supposed to do to make sure that your team gets to where it needs to get to, I think McCaffrey is that guy, and he's the one that will win that award this year.
Jack, your opinion, but is there anyone that should have been on this list? After you go with your opinion, that should have been on this that isn't on this list?
I don't know. It's so hard to compare positions. I'm listening, and you're comparing McCaffrey to Mahomes, different positions. If I'm going to argue against McCaffrey, and I'm not saying I'm arguing against them, you could point to the 49er offense. Look at all the weapons they have. That opens it up for him. The defenses can't key on him, okay? They can't, make it a point to try to stop him the way they might try to stop other players. And Myles Garrett, he kind of faded out at the end of the year. He went, like a few games without even getting a sack. So had you asked that question maybe 12 games into the season, Myles Garrett would have been a great choice, but he didn't close the deal, more or less. It's a hard one. Whoever's picked is picked. I couldn't put one.
Who was the defensive tackle from the Chiefs?
Chris Jones.
Yeah, he probably could have been on that list. Without him,
difference maker. Good point. He was a big difference maker at the end.
I agree.
And even in the Super Bowl, yeah.
And I think that actually hurts Mahomes in this mix because you had him there on that team as well. Like, he should have been on that list instead of maybe Myles Garrett. You saw exactly what happened when he wasn't playing and the Chiefs were struggling. and then all of a sudden he comes back and that defense is right back on target. So I think that actually is going to affect Mahomes, and that's why I think McCaffrey will win.
That's a great point.
Sometimes with leadership, we have a perception of who's a lead on the team, and Patrick Mahomes is a leader, definitely, and he's a strong leader, but you get the feeling that Chris Jones is the stronger leader. Kind of like with the Yankees, the perception was, oh, Derek Jeter's the captain, he's the leader. CC Sabathia was actually more of a leader, in a certain sense. But it didn't diminish Jeter's leadership, which he set primarily by example.
So the EASP SB Awards gives you the best team. I'm just going to leave it to football right now. The two teams in that category are, of course, the Chiefs or the Michigan Wolverines. Different football style, different, the college compared to pro. But if you're going to pick a better team, who would you pick? I think it's a pretty interesting question. What do you think, James? I'll let you go first.
I'm going to go with the Wolverines. I mean, I just think they were dominant defensively, and they actually played similar to old school ball. They didn't throw. They wasn't high volume passing. It was just run the ball, run it down your throat, and stop you defensively. I just thought they were complete, and they beat some really good teams, man. I think in college. So I like Michigan as the better team overall.
Okay, the Wolverines. I'm not saying I disagree or agree. Pags, different leagues, but we're saying a unit team, coached, and plays together and goes to the championship. Both of them won the championships in their respective leagues. Who do you think?
Tell you that really is an interesting question. I guess you have to go with Michigan just because they didn't lose a game. They did have to deal with some adversity. They did have that whole scandal where they were cheating, and then they get the coach isn't allowed to be on the sidelines, and that guy had to get fired, and all blah 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 blah. Like they had a lot of stuff going on. Look at the Chiefs. Chiefs had a lot of controversy too. They had the wide receivers keep dropping the balls. They had Chris Jones didn't come out right at the beginning of the season. He didn't come out there to game 5 or 6. Right. So there are a lot of different things that both teams had to deal with in terms of adversity. And then you think about even in the playoffs, you have Travis Kelce screaming at Andy Reid. You know what I mean? And doing those types of things where there seems to be a little bit of dissension maybe on the sidelines, all of which goes to the common goal that they all want to win the games. I think when you put the two of those together and you add that all up, I think Michigan winds up winning that.
Yeah, Michigan had a better season if you're going to prorate it against the Chiefs. The Chiefs struggled and they put it together in the playoffs. And just look at the signature wins. I mean, Michigan beat Ohio State. I mean, you don't get a game any bigger than that. And the Chiefs walked a little bit of a tightrope. I mean, they went into Buffalo, won a tight game there. Super Bowl could have gone either way. It's great that the Chiefs put it together, but if you take the whole season into account, you got to go with Michigan.
Okay, and Jeremy kind of is not ranking, but making some comments about J.J. McCarthy practicing with as the third string quarterback. I know he's having a little problem with the Vikings right now. I've read some stories about that, but it's training camp. I'm not worried about it in training camp, especially with him learning a new system, everything, and he says he's a big Michigan fan.
Not that good. Not that good.
Anyway, that's very interesting. So I want to get this. Here, hold on.
Uh-oh.
I know I freeze for a second. So, Jackie, what did you say? Because I didn't hear that last part. You said J.J. McCarthy's not that good. Is that what you said?
I'm not that high on J.J. McCarthy. I mean, he wasn't. I mean, he contributed to Michigan winning the national championship. He's a good college player, but like I've said all along, Sam Darnold is going to start for the Vikings this year. I think he's going to have a good year. And then at the end of the season, I don't think J.J. McCarthy is going to be that close to being the starter going into next season, let alone this year. But, it remains to be seen. But, yeah.
Oh, all right. So the old Jet quarterback, Jack, is praying that one of his former Jets does something somewhere else. So we'll see what happens there. Let's talk about some of the ESPY awards that it makes me scratch my head a little bit. They had, let's see, the best, and this is great, the best, the men's athlete of the year. So this is the award given to the best men's athlete. Best men's athlete. Okay, you have, of course, we're going to start off, and you got Patrick Mahomes, you got Connor Davis, you got players that played in the pro leagues, and that. My biggest concern is they have one of the best men's athletes of the year. It's golfer Scott Scheffler. There's no NBA player in that group. There's no soccer player in that group. Of course, it's the Lamar Jacksons, the Patrick Mahomes and stuff like that. How do you put a golfer ahead of a basketball player or a soccer player or any?
Okay, so you know what? We don't talk about golf at all, because see what happens when you talk about golf on this show. You get booted off.
I don't like the term athlete, because if we're talking athlete, let's look at the guys who do the decathlon in the Olympics. I mean, they're obviously better athletes. They have to run, they got to hurdle, they got to pole vault, et cetera, et cetera. And so how do you compare as an athlete? I mean, if you want to prorate who's greater within their sport, I mean, that's even a hard one to do. Couldn't I say a jockey?
Yeah, but Jack, but let's talk about that. How many decathlons do we get to watch a year?
Correct. But correct. But you're talking about as an athlete, and even the sports where you have to show a lot of athletic ability, in a sense, it's one-dimensional. Even football, where you have to show a lot of athletic ability. You could get a guy who's basically a pocket quarterback who could, take the pass from the shotgun. He's smart at reading defenses, and he just has a good arm. It doesn't make him a more agile than a wide receiver. That's for sure. Even a safety or whatever. I don't like the term best athlete.
Okay, well,
that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, just that being said, when you put them all together, no, a golfer shouldn't be in the list. I mean, a golfer is who had the best season. If you are putting in who had the best season amongst every sport, that falls into that category. When you're talking about athletes, I don't think that the golfer falls into that same thing. It's just, hey, it's not that it's hard to walk 18 holes, 4 days in a row, but you don't have to carry your own bag. You don't have to do any of that. That's what should really, if you made them carry their own bags and they had to walk these courses, that would make it, then I would consider them more of an athlete. But all they got is muscle memory.
When you say best athlete, I look back when LeBron was in his prime, he would win this title a lot. And you can say, okay, LeBron specifically is the best athlete. That makes more sense when you look at it from a true athletic perspective.
Guys, you talk about athletes. I don't know whether you remember this. In baseball, relief pitchers used to be driven to the mound by a cart. They get in the cart would drive them to the pitching mound. You don't see that anymore, but that was a thing that happened in the past. I mean, there's so much for athletic, this and that. But even in baseball, look at how athletic a shortstop has to be, or a second baseman, going in the hole, turning around. It's so hard. The term athlete, as I said, it's kind of vague.
Well, the comparison is, to me, you have an NFL player, you have a hockey player who's and they're talking about probably who they feel are the best in their leagues. You're talking about, and then you talk about a golfer. A golfer doesn't have to be an athlete to play golf. He doesn't have to run. He doesn't have to lift weights. He doesn't have to. I mean, it's a totally different thing. And this is why I kind of have a problem with.
Work out, Matt.
Yeah, I disagree with that.
I'm not saying they don't.
Yeah, I disagree with that. Like they are more than what you're making them, but not anywhere near the level of other sports. Like I said, if you made them carry their own bag and they had to walk 18 holes 4 days in a row, all of a sudden that becomes a game of attrition, and that becomes a little bit more athletic. And for that, I think it would be more worthwhile. But they're not carrying their own bags. They get to walk. You usually have somebody with an umbrella there so they don't get too much sun. You know what I mean? It's weird.
I'm going to tell you, take a boxers, for example.
I'm not
They're terrible athletes.
Sure what sport. I'm not sure what sport John Daly would play in. The golfer John Daly. I'm not sure. I mean, he'd kick a field goal if you're going to consider that an athlete.
He'd be a bowler.
But I don't think a golfer belongs. I think there should be a separate category for best golfers, not best athlete. I think it's trying to be inclusive, and because ESPN covers a lot of golf, I think that's why he's in there, and that's what I think it's all about. I don't think it's a true representation of a best athlete, and I'm not trying to put golfers down. I'm just saying that I don't know any the training that goes through for golf and other sports. To me, is a lot different, and it just didn't make sense to me. That's all I'm saying with that. Breakout performances, guys. They had breakout performances. McCaffrey was in there with his, what he did with the touchdowns and all that stuff. So he was part of the breakout performances. Caitlin Clark, for what she did in college, was part of breakout performances. But the reason they give is because she broke Pistol Pete Maravich's all-time scoring NCAA record. And that shouldn't be the reason. She beat the NCAA women's record. She didn't have to play against men's teams. There was no three-point line back then when Pistol Pete played. And it's a different level of competition. So the reason for that, I think, is crazy. I say let's do it. Let's have the NCAA men's championship team play the NCAA women's championship team, and we'll see who the better athlete, better breakout season would have been if Pistol Pete would have been there. If that makes no sense, but you know what I'm saying. There is no comparison there, and I think they should at least give Pistol Pete his credit at being the greatest all-time scorer in the men's, and not keep putting Caitlin Clark in there. So that's my opinion. I know Pags loves Caitlin Clark. She has a poster of her in his room, but I still think that's a terrible reason. So,
I agree, but Pags is going to try to give a politically correct answer like he normally does.
No, when am I politically correct? Actually, the truth of the matter is that she scored the most amount of points in the games that she played in NCAA history. That's it. That's all. Right. Doesn't matter. She wasn't competing against Pete. Pete just happened to have the record, and she just took it over. She took it over. So she's got the most. If you're going to put them all in one basket, she's got the most points. End of story. You're not comparing her against Pete. Pete was a whole different player. But no, you're not.
Well, that's
no,
what they're
not.
Doing.
They are not doing that.
The reason why
they gave her the breakout. They gave her the break. No, they said, whoever wrote that article said that. She actually had a really good season. She single-handedly took her team to the NCAA championship. Like, that's single-handedly. Her team stunk around her. And she was able to go ahead and score enough points and win enough games to go ahead and do that and bring her team all the way to play up against South Carolina and then get beat because South Carolina had the right answers. That's real. So, yes, for those reasons, it's breakout. That writer is actually being very soft by saying, oh, because she won the title. That's not the reason, because she single-handedly brought her team to a national championship. She lost it, but she still brought her team there.
I agree.
Somebody should agree with me.
I do agree.
And again, I think I'm freezing up because it looks like you all are freezing up.
Yeah, it's not us. It's definitely
Oh,
you.
no. Oh, am I freezing up?
That's why you keep popping out.
Okay. James, do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm going to piggyback on what Pax said. I just think that, yes, she won it. I mean, if she's up for the award, it's deservingly so. She should definitely have the opportunity to win that because, again, it's like it reminds me when LeBron in 2007 when he took Cleveland to the championship. There was nobody you could name on that team with him that was a significant all-star or anything like that. She's the same to me in regards to her run to the championship. She got blown out, they got beat, but man, she's the only reason that team made it there to get where they were. It's because of her. So yeah, she deserves that to be in that category.
All right, okay. I don't think there should be a comparison between Kevin McCaffrey's breakout season and her breakout season. I just don't like the category. That's one of my biggest problems with this.
You think they should be separated?
But anyway, they also had the and this was both professional and college. They gave, of course, the Boston Celtics, the Kansas City Chiefs, as we talked about, the Wolverines, the Texas Rangers, the Florida Panthers, UConn men basketball, the basketball aces with the WNBA. And then they put in there, women's college softball team, the Oklahoma Sooners. Any thoughts on that?
I have not seen enough Sooners games, so I can't tell. I can't speak intelligently on that. But if they won a championship, if they brought out anybody who won a championship and they put all those teams in the category, if they won the national championship, they deserve to be there. But I only watch college softball for about 1 week a year when ESPN shows it.
Okay, well, they've been showing a lot of college softball this year. Jack, what do you think? I mean, are you going to compare a softball team? And listen, I've played softball. It's not the easiest. It's certainly not the hardest sport. Do you think that lines up with a college basketball team? What they got to do, the work they got to do, a college football team, a national football team. Should that team be in the conversation?
No, not at all. I mean, you take a basketball team, they've got to practice on a constant basis. If you let them take a couple of weeks off and then throw them in a game, they're going to be way off form. A women's softball, a men's softball team, you could just, practice is important, but you could just place them on the field and everyone's an individual in their position for the most part, and they can function. And the revenue they make for the universities, how are you even going to compare? A men's basketball, big-time basketball program makes an astounding amount of money. How much revenue does a women and men's, softball team bring? And it doesn't mean that they're not great sports. They definitely should have teams. But again, you can't make a comparison.
And that's what kind of I'm trying to get to, James. I know they're trying to be inclusive, and I know they're trying to account for everything, but you don't see the cricket team in there. You don't see the lacrosse team in there. Who was the lacrosse champions last year? That's a hell of a sport too. Why aren't they in there? I think it's because they show the softball games during the year, and that's why they're in the mix here. That's just my opinion.
Well, I have to agree with Jack on the impact in regards, because most scholarships come off the backs of football players. Most of the revenue is coming from football. And so a lot of those scholarships, like you said, are the money that's brought in is help support those sports like we're talking about, like softball and volleyball and other little small ancillary sports that exist that really doesn't bring a lot to the table, financially. Yes, but I still believe that there's some inclusion in their regard that you should have. It's hard. It's really hard to say, like Pags say, I don't really watch a lot of the games, so you don't see the impact that it has for people who are watching. I don't know. I just think, I agree with you both in regards to some of the rigors of the other sports are a lot tougher, and you should maybe keep them separate. But how do you do that in this world we live in now? I don't know. It's just different. So it's I'm on the fence. It's really hard to really say, to be honest with you.
Well, the reason why I'm kind of saying this is because, as I mentioned, lacrosse is a tough sport. Volleyball, Jim mentioned. College baseball's not in this, and it's a very tough sport. I mean, there's so many. You could just line it up with every championship team in that and put them all in that category, but they're not. You're putting on something that they show, and that's my point with the whole thing. Is that I think it's partly because they're on ESPN, and it's not, to me, it's not a true indicator of what the best team or who the best team is, and that's all I'm trying to say.
Well, I got a question. Did your team or list include South Carolina women's basketball?
Yes, it did.
It did? Yeah, I would have taken, that makes more sense to me because they were dominant. I don't know how Oklahoma Sooners team was, where they're dominant in their run.
I'm not sure. I mean, I watch the games. It's not like I'm following them. So let's get to a little basketball and get out of this here for the SB Awards. A lot of free agents are available. Some are more available than others. In other words, LeBron James opted out. He's probably going back to the Lakers. James Harden, I'm not sure of. I mean, they got a couple players here on the Clippers, Paul George, and two main players from last year that may or may not leave. Jack, I go to you with this. I mean, if you're to pick a player to stay with the Clippers besides their superstar, I got a brain freeze right now.
Kawhi Leonard.
Hurt all the time. Thank you, Kawhi Leonard. I mean, who are you? If you're the Clippers, which one would you be more anxious to sign of the other two?
Kawhi Leonard, I mean, easily. I know he's been injured, he's been out a lot, but James Harden is towards the end of his career as an elite player. If he's an elite player, he's not the player he was. He gets a lot of assists. He'll play an outstanding game, and then the next game or two, he'll have to recuperate from that. Kawhi Leonard, if he can see the court and he's highly motivated and stays healthy, he's outstanding. But it's a big if with him. But with Harden, you're not going to get the James Harden of old. Forget, those days are way over. But Kawhi Leonard, you still might. You hope you do. I know. Pags is high on James Harden. Right. Wishes he'd go back to the Sixers.
No idea.
Oh yeah, bring James Harden back. Actually, send him to the Jets. I hear that the Jets need a rebounder and a scorer.
Well, let me tell you, some people have linked Paul George to the Sixers. Would he be the difference maker? If right now, I think we can agree, if things stay status quo, the Knicks have they passed the Sixers. Look, they did beat them in the playoffs, but we're getting Mikal Bridges. You'd have to rate the Knicks higher than the Sixers at the moment. But if Paul George went to the Sixers, is that a difference maker? Does that put them on a level with the Knicks or ahead of the Knicks Is he that big of a difference maker if he goes to Sixers? Because the Sixers are going to make a move. I can't imagine them standing pat. They have to make a big move, and the most logical big move to make is getting Paul George.
Is that a logical move? Paying somebody.
Well, they have no one
plus-
else. They're not going to get Klay Thompson. He would be a better fit than Klay Thompson on the Sixers.
I'm not a fan of paying Paul George all that money for him to not produce. Like, we're following the same script over and over and over again with the James Harden. Before that, it was Simmons. It's just the same thing over and over and over again. I'm tired of the old players getting paid ridiculous amounts of money to not come through in the playoffs. And that's been Paul George's MO. Has he ever won a championship? I want guys that have won championships, guys that know how to get over the hump and actually win. That's what I want. Does that mean I'm going to get anybody that even anybody's available? I can't answer that question because I'm not a GM of basketball. But I tell you, I think it's time. I'll be honest. I think it's time to blow it up.
Well, but that's a good point, because I was going to say, we all know, guys, part of signing an elite player or a big name player, I should say, is to keep your franchise player happy. And part of this with the Sixers, they want to keep Embiid happy. If they're committed to Embiid long term, and they want him long term, I should say, they've got to keep him happy. And if they don't do anything, Embiid thinks, I'm coming to training camp. We don't really have that good a chance of winning the championship. We have an outside chance, but that's about it. But they get Paul George, it would energize Joel Embiid a little more.
Maybe, but meh. That's what I got to say about that. It's just,
the only one available out there that's won a championship right now that I know of is Klay Thompson, right? Is that the only one out there right now that's available? I know Dejounte Murray goes to. We might as well get this out of the way. Dejounte Murray, James, tell us a little bit about that move there.
They trade with Atlanta for Dejounte Murray for 2 first rounders, and they give up 3 players to Atlanta as well. I think I get it now. I used to think this is very steep to get a player of that ilk, but now you're starting to see that that's just how the NBA works. It's different from the NFL. You see 2, 3 first rounders, and I look at it when you look at what they're doing it for. When you see the players that come out, a lot of players, I'm like, okay, it's a crapshoot to get a player, but to get a player at a high level in coming out of the first round, but it's worth it to give up a couple of first rounders for a player like this who closes games. He's a clutch shooter. He was up there with 3 top in game closing shots with Steph Curry, and he's had all season career high last year with Atlanta, and I think he'll do well for them as long as the big elephant in the room is Zion, whether he can stay healthy or not. But it's a good pickup for them.
Big question. Zion. If Zion and Murray can play together, they might have something there. Quickly, Emmanuel quickly, Jack got signed by the Toronto Raptors. I think it's $179 million. They extended him.
175.
Yeah. So
$35 million a year for 5 years.
So the Raptors are impressed with quickly who we got rid of to get Anunoby, who is injury prone. Also, got a big contract. So that's going to be a big question mark for the Knicks also going forward, whether Anunoby can stay healthy all year, especially in the playoffs. To me, it's a big risk they're taking, and we'll see how it plays out.
Is Anunoby really injury prone? I know he got hurt last year, but I can't say he's injury prone.
from what I read, he has an injury history of missing games, Jack. But last year, I think the year before he came in the Knicks, he was hurt. He was hurt part of that year, and they were talking about bringing him over and his injury history. So he did miss playoffs last year, even though he was day to day. So we'll see what happens. $212 million is a lot of money. As Pat's saying, they're paying a lot of money for players. That's for damn sure. So let's talk a little bit about a Hall of Famer, a San Francisco Giant. And Jack gave me a hard time because, I really didn't know this guy being that. In fact, Jack, I went on a few websites, and 2 out of the 5 didn't even have him listed as one of the San Francisco Giant greats. And the other 2 that did were very, they were valid. Bleacher Report, another one. Zapata passes away, played during Willie Mays' era, maybe a little bit, and maybe a little overshadowed by Willie Mays. But he definitely was a great player for the Giants, Jack.
Orlando Cepeda, yeah. He was also a great St. Louis Cardinal. It's like he split duty between the 2 teams. So you can, and he won a World Series with the Cardinals in 1967. He never won one with the Giants. He went to one with the Giants in 1962. He won it with the Cardinals in 67 when he was MVP. And then they went to the World Series, the Cardinals, the next year, 68. Great player. I mean, when he was Willie Mays' teammate, there was some people who thought he was better than Willie Mays at points, when he was with the Giants. Believe it or not, he was more of a force at times. I mean, he was absolutely outstanding. A great, great player, Orlando Cepeda, great leader at first base. I don't know who you compare him to. I don't know who you compare him to today. I mean, in a certain sense, you might be able to compare him to Bryce Harper. You could say Bryce was a little better, but he's in the same category, in the same discussion when Cepeda was at his best. Yeah, you could say he was nearly the equivalent of Bryce Harper.
Okay, well, speaking of Bryce Harper and Schwarber, back both on the 10-day injured list.
Yep. I blame Dave Portnoy. He made
blame him?
Yeah, he made the bet, and now they're both hurt. They'll be fine. I think it was a little tweak on both parts, and it was hot. It's hot. That just tells me that they weren't drinking enough fluids and stuff like that. I think that's what really it came down to. I think that they'll be fine. If they don't make it to the All-Star game, they'll be back right after.
Jack made to me a great point. A lot of players, they get hurt running the bases more than they do in the field. It's that burst of energy to first base or to get to second or whatever. Do you think maybe it's time? I go to James because James hasn't said nothing for a while. That maybe they should start riding bikes or rubbing down their legs or having some kind of massages in between innings when they're not at bat, because once they get up at bat, it seems like when they're running a first or trying to steal second, they pull hamstrings and ACLs and all kinds of injuries they get to their legs.
Well, I mean, you look at football or you look at basketball, a lot of these guys are on the sidelines getting massages in basketball, or in football, they're riding bikes to keep from getting tight. So maybe they should advocate to try to do the same thing instead of just sitting on the bench in the dugout. But yeah, it makes more sense because you can definitely get tight, man. I just remember myself, without stretching or staying active, I pulled hamstrings many times. So yeah, it would make sense to try to maybe consider advocating that or try to implementing that into the game, because it could prevent a lot of injuries, lower extremity injuries.
But the downside to that, guys, can you imagine the guys, instead of being in the dugout, a number of them are back in the training room. They're getting stretched out. They know how many outs are left in the inning, and with 2 outs, they come back to the dugout. That would be an unusual scenario, but we would get used to it. We get used to them ducking in the back and stretching. And yeah, but especially take a guy who's getting up as a pinch hitter, something. The guy's sitting all game. You really expect him to sprint all out to first base, and if he gets to first, you expect him to run the bases all out. But it's all philosophy, I guess. But
listen, great question by Jeremy here. Is the pitch clock?
Oh, go ahead with Jeremy's question.
I was just going to wonder, what do you guys thought on the pitch clock? A team actually won the game because of pitch clock violation. I guess in a balk, if the bases are loaded, you can too, but that you really don't see. This is kind of pressing the pitcher and the batter to speed up the game. What's your opinion on this, guys? I mean, it could happen in Game 7 of the World Series. Will they loosen up the pitching clock in the World Series, or should they, or should it not even count during the World Series or maybe playoffs? What do you think, Pags?
I think that pitchers are stretching it. That they have been given a little bit of leeway. I know that specifically at Citizens Bank Park, sometimes the crowd counts down so that the umpire knows when it's at 0, because there's been a couple of times that they've had the pitch clock violation and they haven't done it. I don't really care. Truth of the matter is that when it's at 0 and they're calling the pitch clock violation, if somebody happens to score on it, that's your own fault. Should have been more aware of what's going on. End of story. Or your catcher should have been more aware of what's going on and called timeout. Both the pitcher and the catcher, or the batter can all call timeout at any point, and that they should know better.
Jack, the pressure's on. It's Game 7. It's the bottom of the ninth. The game is tied. The bases are loaded. There's 2 outs. Here's a pitcher getting warmed up. Maybe the catcher tries to call a timeout, but it's not in time. There's a lot of things going on. Everybody's leading off of bases, and you lose the game because of a time clock violation. I think that would sting any fan that lost that game.
What's the difference if they lose a game because of a balk? The same way, because the pitcher gets distracted and he opens up his hands or whatever. So no difference at all. They're used to the rules by now. It's not new rules for the playoffs, and if it happens, it happens. I don't think anyone wouldn't turn people's opinions upside down suddenly. There'd be replays of the pitcher, basically breaking the rule and not releasing the ball within the time limit.
I don't know, James. I don't think people are going to be that calm on the losing team that's saying, hey, well, it's part of the game, whatever. It could have been a balk. I think the fans of the other team will be going crazy with that loss. I think it would be a historic thing. I think there would be unbelievable questions whether they should keep it or not. I think it will be blown right out of blown out of the water. There would be a lot of discussion. It would be, the rules. This is the first year it's instituted. If that happened, I think there would be a hell of a debate.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't know much about the rule or not. But yes, anything that it's going, if it's one sided, if you're on the losing end, you're always going to be ticked off about how something ended regarding a specific rule versus just the game itself being played out. Yeah, so I can't really speak much on it because I don't know much about it. But I just know that I would rather see a game go the distance with just a game, not in football. You don't want to go off on a penalty or anything like that. You'd rather see the game play out. So I would rather see the game just play out. But again, I don't know much about it, so I was really hoping to speak on that.
And we're not even talking about the ghost runner on second base in extra innings. I'm not even going to get into that today because that would take another 5 minutes out of my time. Anyway, folks, we're at the end of the show. Thanks for tuning in. Pax, thanks for stopping in. Thanks to Keith for stopping in. Great show, guys. We'll see you. Keep with Roku all day today. All shows all day, every day. And me and Jack will be back tomorrow on the Mac and Jack Sports Show. Have a great one, everyone. Enjoy your Sunday.